If you pick up a political thriller, you basically know the rhythm of the plot.
Oh, definitely. The protagonist makes a calculated move, the antagonist counters, backroom alliances shift.
Right, exactly. And by the end of the chapter, the entire landscape is just completely transformed.
Yeah, but we are not looking at fiction today.
No, we are not. We are looking at the real-time, high-speed mechanics of one of the largest democracies in the world. And the alliances are shifting so fast. It is genuinely hard to keep track of who is on whose side.
It really is.
Welcome to our deep dive. We are taking you into the rapidly moving terrain of Nigerian politics today, specifically zeroing in on the massive electoral battleground of Kano State.
Kano it is incredibly crucial for the national map.
It is, and we have a single mission today, unpacking the Sunday, April 19th, 2026 announcement that Ibrahim Shekarau is leaving the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, to rejoin the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC.
Right, which is a move that completely scrambles the board ahead of the 2027 elections.
Oh, totally.
And to really understand this single April 2026 headline, we have to look closely at the historical and structural patterns of Nigerian democracy.
Yeah.
This is a story about how power is built from the ground up.
How it is maintained against rival factions.
Exactly, and how it is ultimately transferred.
So we are digging into a pretty big stack of recent reporting today. We have got articles from Punch, Daily Trust, The Cable, The Sun, Daily Post, PM News, Vanguard, and a really detailed editorial story treatment and interview guide.
Lots of different perspectives in there.
A ton. And because these sources are covering deeply entrenched rivalries and, highly charged political strategy, we just want to lay our cards on the table right off the bat.
Yeah, that is an important point to make. Our job isn't to take a side.
Right. We are not endorsing any viewpoints, and we are certainly not backing any politicians or parties, whether that is the PDP, the APC, the NNPP, or the ADC. We are just purely conveying the facts, the ideas, and the events that are contained in this original reporting.
Just dissecting the mechanics. And the most important mechanic to dissect is the foundational power of the man at the center of this.
Ibrahim Shekarau.
Yes. You really cannot understand why a single politician changing his party in 2026 is front-page news across an entire nation, unless you understand the immense political capital he has built over decades.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading these sources, it is like analyzing a high-stakes political thriller where the players change teams mid-game. I really want you, the listener, to try and keep track of the sheer velocity of these moves today.
It is dizzying, but to get it, we need to rewind.
Right. We have to look at how someone acquires that level of gravity in the first place. So we are talking about a man born in 1955, right in the Kermawa quarters of Kano.
A true local.
Yeah. And he graduates with a degree in mathematics and education in 1977 from Ahmadu Bello University. He literally starts his career as a math teacher in Wudil.
Which is so far removed from typical Godfather politics.
Exactly. He eventually works his way up the administrative ladder to become a permanent secretary in the Kano State Ministry of Education. And then he enters politics in 2001.
Notice what is missing from that resume, though.
Yeah, what is it?
Well, there is no long history of political thuggery. There is no entrenched Godfather status, and no legacy wealth being thrown around to buy influence.
He is just a civil servant.
Right. When he enters the political arena in 2001, he's recruited by political stakeholders almost entirely on the strength of a fierce reputation for intense personal integrity and very solid conservative Islamic credentials.
I look at his rise and I see an almost impossible trajectory. In 2003, running on the NNPP platform, he does what most political analysts thought was basically unthinkable.
The massive upset.
Yes, he defeats a sitting incumbent governor, Rabiu Kwankwaso of the PDP, and then he does it again in 2007.
Making him the first person to win 2 consecutive terms in Kano since the state was created in 1968. They even gave him the prestigious title of Sardana of Kano.
Which is huge. But the mechanics of it are what I really want to pull apart, because to me, he calculated a path from the classroom to the governor's office. How does someone go from grading math tests to defeating an entrenched incumbent and then fundamentally reshaping the state's entire legal and social structure so quickly?
What's fascinating here is how his reputation for moral integrity and his civil service background perfectly resonated with the conservative Kano electorate.
So it's just a perfect match of candidate and voters.
Basically, yes. Kano has a deeply conservative, highly populated electorate that places a massive premium on moral authority. By 2003, voters felt disconnected from the elites. So when they looked at Shekarau, they saw a teacher, an administrator, someone uncompromised by the dirty games of the political machine.
And the sources outline a series of sweeping changes he made once he was in power. He implements Sharia penal law, he sets up the Sharia Commission, the Zakat and Hubzi Commission for Islamic Wealth Distribution, and the Hizbah Board.
All very structural interventions.
Yeah, and he also launches this massive social reorientation program called Adai Daigasahu. But, for someone looking at this from the outside, these just sound like bureaucratic committees. How do these specific institutions translate into the kind of unshakable political loyalty that lasts for over 2 decades?
Well, because they were not just bureaucratic committees. They were direct interventions into the daily lives and cultural identity of his constituents. Take the Hizbah Board, for instance.
Right.
To an outsider, it is often just summarized as a religious police force. But structurally, it functioned as a massive community dispute resolution mechanism. It dealt with localized, everyday issues like family disputes and social cohesion.
Things the regular state police were probably too stretched to handle.
Exactly. Or look, the Adai Daigasahu program. That wasn't just a law, it was a societal campaign about traffic rules, interpersonal respect, family values. He fused practical civil service execution with the religious and moral identity of his voters.
So he was basically building infrastructure around the cultural soul of Kano, building a bedrock of trust.
Yes. And that kind of trust is intensely personal. It attaches to the individual, not to whatever political party they happen to belong to.
But, that personal trust brings us to a massive contradiction in the reporting. Let's unpack the sheer volume of his political movement over the last decade because, it is staggering.
It really is.
He builds this image of unshakable moral integrity. Yet, if we look at the timeline, his career looks like an ideological merry-go-round.
Let's hear the timeline.
All right, so 2011, he runs for president on the ANPP ticket and loses to Goodluck Jonathan. In 2013, he is a founding member of the APC. But by January 2014, he leaves the very party he helped found and joins the PDP, where he becomes Minister of Education.
Right.
Then jump to May 2022. He leaves the APC, which he had obviously gone back to at some point, and joins the NNPP after a clash with Governor Ganduje. Barely 3 months later, August 2023, he leaves the NNPP and goes back to the PDP because he fell out with his old rival Kwankwaso over a senatorial ticket.
A lot of jumping around.
A ton. And now, April 2026, he resigns from the PDP alongside Senator Bello Hayatu Gwarzo right at his Mundubawa Avenue residence. Immediate effect. And he rejoins the APC for what the sources note is at least his 3rd stint.
It is a dizzying sequence of defections, without a doubt.
I really struggled to square this circle. To a casual observer or even to the fierce critics mentioned in our sources, jumping from the APC to the PDP to the NNPP, back to the PDP and back to the APC, it looks like naked political opportunism.
I can see why people say that.
But I have to ask, if you're jumping from the APC to the PDP to the NNPP and back again, is this just a game of political musical chairs for personal gain? How does a figure whose entire brand is built on moral integrity defend treating political parties like revolving doors?
Well, the defense from his camp and his supporters is actually remarkably consistent, and it reveals a lot about how the Nigerian political party system operates. In many Western democracies, a political party is an ideological silo. You stay because you believe in the foundational philosophy of the party. But in Nigeria, political parties function much more like administrative vehicles for accessing state resources and distributing power to regional constituencies.
Okay.
So Shekarau supporters argue that every single one of his moves has been driven by legitimate grievances regarding the marginalization of his base.
So it is less about, I changed my mind on healthcare policy, and more about, my people are being locked out of the room.
Exactly. Look at the pattern of triggers for his defections outlined in the sources. In 2014, he left the APC for the PDP because the party structures in Kano were being handed over to Kwankwaso, which sidelined Shekarau's massive support base.
I see.
And in 2022, he left the NNPP because of disputes over ticket allocations, meaning his loyalists were being denied the opportunity to run for office. He doesn't leave because his views on Islamic law or education reform have fundamentally changed. He leaves because the internal power sharing of the party fails his faction.
So the party becomes useless as a tool for his constituency.
Right.
I view this like a massive national transit system. The political party is just a cab company. If the driver of the APC cab refuses to let you control the radio or won't take your supporters where they need to go, you don't just sit in the back seat and suffer out of loyalty to the yellow paint on the car.
No, you definitely don't.
You just get out, stand on the corner, and hail the PDP cab. or the NNPP cab. And because your supporters trust you, the passenger, they all get out of the car and follow you to the next one.
The cab company metaphor is actually the perfect way to visualize it. The electorate's loyalty is to the man paying the fare and directing the route, not the corporate logo on the door. And this dynamic is exactly what is driving the massive strategic maneuvering we are seeing right now in April 2026.
Right, because this whole history of movement is really just the prologue. The immediate catalyst for this specific April 2026 move is the looming 2027 general elections. And on the national chessboard, the ultimate prize is Kano State. The sources highlight that Kano is Nigeria's most populous state outside of Lagos. It is a massive electoral prize. But the ruling APC lost Kano in 2023.
They did, to the NNPP's Abubakar Yusuf.
Yeah, driven by Kwankwaso's Kwankwasia movement.
Losing Kano was a structural earthquake for the APC. A ruling party cannot comfortably maintain national dominance, especially in the north, without controlling or at least heavily neutralizing the opposition in Kano.
So they are looking at the 2027 map and realizing they have a massive mathematical deficit. Here's where it gets really interesting. I look at this and I see a corporate hostile takeover.
What do you mean?
Well, on April 9, 2026, the APC National Chairman, Professor Nentayo Wata, pays a highly publicized visit to Shekarau. He publicly calls him a political pillar that the party needs to reclaim the state. The reporting also notes that Shekarau met with President Bola Tinubu over the Easter period to formalize this return.
They really rolled out the red carpet.
They did. They are actively acquiring the biggest local assets, like Shekarau's religious and moral standing, to forcefully buy back the market share they lost in 2023. Imagine your local politics being this heavily reliant on the gravity of a single individual rather than the party machinery itself.
The corporate takeover analogy holds up beautifully, especially when you look at how fractured the opposition landscape is right now. The APC is making this acquisition because they see an opening.
Right, because Kwankwaso is now in the ADC coalition, right, with Atiku and Obi.
Exactly. That leaves a huge power vacuum in Kano.
Yeah.
And the Daily Post actually reports a fascinating twist on this.
Oh, yeah, the thing about Governor Yusuf.
Yes. Governor Abubakar Yusuf, who won Kano via the NNPP in 2023, is now cited in the reporting as a member of the APC who actually welcomed Shekarau's return as a major development.
Which is wild. It demonstrates just how incredibly fluid these cab companies are. The APC is just strategically absorbing these opposition figures to consolidate their grit before 2027.
They are betting that Shekarau's stabilizing conservative anchor will secure their Kano strategy. And at the same time, look at what this does to the PDP.
The sources say the PDP is hemorrhaging key northern figures.
Right. Shekarau leaving them deepens a narrative of structural decline for a party that once ruled the country for 16 years.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know.
Yeah.
People don't want to buy tickets for a ship they think is sinking. Rejoining the APC signals to the northern electorate that the ruling party is the only viable vehicle for regional power consolidation.
Exactly.
But before we crown this as a flawless strategic masterstroke by the APC, there is a shadow hanging over this that we really need to scrutinize.
The EFCC issue.
Yes. The editorial guide in our source stack explicitly flogs an unresolved legal controversy. Back in 2018, the EFCC, which is Nigeria's anti-graft agency, filed criminal charges against Shekarau over the alleged diversion of 950 million naira in fuel subsidy reimbursements that were meant for Kano State in 2011.
A very serious allegation.
Extremely serious. Now, the reporting makes it clear that no conviction has followed. The current status of the case is muddy, and Shekarau has vehemently and consistently maintained that the proceedings are completely politically motivated.
Right.
But hold on. We just spent the first half of this deep dive establishing that his entire political superpower is his unshakable moral and religious authority. How does a politician with an unresolved N950 million EFCC charge still maintain the moral and religious capital required to be the APC's saving grace in Kano?
This raises an important question. Because in many political systems, a pending charge like that would be radioactive.
It would be a career ender.
But it forces us to look at how political capital and institutional trust actually function in the Nigerian landscape. In a system where the institutions of justice are universally trusted, a corruption charge is devastating. But for decades, the Nigerian electorate has watched anti-corruption agencies be heavily politicized.
So they don't necessarily trust the agency bringing the charge.
Exactly. They have seen successive administrations weaponize the EFCC to neutralize political threats or force opposition figures to the negotiating table. So, when a figure like Shekarau, who spent decades building deep localized trust, is charged by an agency controlled by his political rivals. His base doesn't view it as a moral failing on his part.
So they view it as proof that the establishment is terrified of him.
Precisely. The defense of political persecution works because the voters have seen it happen before. Pending charges without convictions often fail to dent local popularity. They actually validate his importance in the eyes of his supporters.
That is fascinating. The voters are weighing his tangible, localized impact on their daily lives against an accusation from a distant federal agency they already distrust.
Which is why the APC still sees him as a massive asset.
So zooming out and looking at this whole narrative, we started with a math teacher grading papers in Wudil. He navigates a path to the governor's office in 2003, reshapes the laws of Kano, and becomes this incredibly valuable, highly mobile political chess piece.
Jumping between the NNPP, APC, PDP, NNPP, and back again.
Right. And it all culminates in this strategic move in April 2026, ahead of the 2027 elections. So what does this all mean? I think it shows an inescapable reality. In Nigerian politics, proximity to power and delivering for your constituency will always, always override loyalty to a party's logo.
It absolutely does. And there is one final detail from the sources that really drives this home, and it raises a deeply philosophical question.
Okay, what is it?
Well, the sources note that because Shekarau is not currently holding office, Section 68 of the Constitution, which actually penalizes elected officials for defecting, doesn't apply to him.
Oh, so he's a total free agent right now.
Yes, but think about the broader implications of that. If a democracy's constitutional rules only punish party switching for those currently in a seat, but the party structures themselves are so fluid that the actual power brokers switch teams seamlessly between election cycles, do political party platforms actually exist in the minds of the voters? Or is the electorate simply voting for individual personal brands, rendering the concept of a political party nothing more than a temporary rental vehicle for the candidate?
That is the exact kind of question that makes you realize the mechanics of reality are vastly more complex than any thriller you could read. Are you voting for the philosophy, or are you just trusting the driver to get you home? We want to thank you for joining us on this custom deep dive. Keep questioning the headlines, keep looking at the forces moving beneath the surface, and we will catch you next time.